Hi there. Welcome to the Schwowin's Nest. My name is Sandra, and I'm so glad you're here. My first project for you today is something that was inspired by Pinterest. I saw someone make this cute little swing for their tiered tray. So I'm using one of these medium-sized tumbling tower blocks. I'm just giving it a dry brush in white because I want a little bit of that wood to show through and give it a rustic look. Now I'm taking some twine and I'm doubling it up, tying a knot at one end, and then I'm going to cut a strand probably about 18 inches in length and tie a knot at the other end. Then I'll do that one more time. This next step is super easy. You're going to take some hot glue, put a little bead on one end, and then glue that little knot on. Then you're going to take some hot glue and do the same thing on the other end so you have the first part of your swing rope. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with the other strand, and this project is done. Stick around to the end of the video where I show you how to style this on your tiered tray. I'm going to add a little bird to mine. My second project for you today is using one of these little terracotta pots that you can get in a pack of 3 from the Dollar Tree. It was already painted previously from another project, but I'm going over it with a different color. This is sort of a mushroomy colored chalk paint that's on my brush, but now I'm going to take some Parisian gray folk art chalk paint and do some dry brushing to give it a little bit more of a weathered look. I'm going to glue down one of these styrofoam balls that I get in a pack of 6 or 8 from the Dollar Tree. And I like to use these for small projects because they fit perfectly and you don't have to use the floral foam and cut it up and make a mess. Now I'm just going to add a big blob of reindeer moss right on top. I'm not even going to hot glue it in. I got some of these little baby succulents at my Dollarama store, and I don't like the color. I know that's what succulents look like, but I'm not into the burgundy. I'm not into those bright greens. So I'm taking the Martha Stewart vintage chalk paint in the color eucalyptus, and I'm going to give them all just one coat. I want a little bit of that original color to peek through because that just gives them more texture and makes them look more lifelike. While I wait for the succulents to dry, I'm going to doctor up this little pot with a little tissue paper print. I'm using some Mod Podge and I'm going to just put a nice thin layer of Mod Podge all over where I know the label is going to go. Then I'm going to grab it using my paintbrush. I love this trick because then I don't have to use two hands. I can just put that paintbrush right in smack in the middle of that transfer and then just place it where I need it to be. Then you're going to take your brush again with some Mod Podge on it all the time and starting from the center, work your way out. If you'd like to see a start to finish tutorial on how to print on tissue paper, I'll have a link for you at the end of this video. Now I'm just going to take some hot glue and glue these right down into the moss and into the styrofoam. I think this little mini succulent garden turned out super cute. For this next project, it's super easy. You need 7 of the tumbling tower blocks. Now you'll notice mine are a little bit bigger than what you can get at the Dollar Tree, but I don't have the ability to get them at Dollar Tree anymore. They're not carrying them, so I had to look elsewhere. Anyhow, I'm going to glue 3 of them together. And then I'm going to glue 2 of them to the sides to make a frame, and I'm going to have them standing on their ends. And then I'm going to add 2 of them on an angle at the top to make the roof of a house. I'm going to paint the house white and the roof light gray. The white paint that I'm using is a DIY chalk paint. I learned this technique from Holly over at Hot Humble Pie. So if you're not familiar with her channel, you're going to learn so much stuff there. I know I have. But I've got this recipe down in my description box if you want to take a look. And of course, if you've been watching my channel, you know I love to distress things. So I'm just using a fan brush. It's really rough. It's got some paint crusted on it and it just gives some really great texture. So I'm just dipping the brush in the paint, dabbing some of it off on the paper, and then just dragging it across the house in the direction of the wood grain. Since this is a little sign that's going to be going on a tiered tray, I decided to make it double-sided. So I'm going to use my Craft Smart oil-based pen and write the word home on the front and farmhouse on the back. If you don't want to handwrite this, you can by all means use some stickers or a stencil or even a Cricut. This next project is also going to use the same tumbling tower blocks. I'm going to create a little farmhouse window. Now, I'm not going to use all of the 4 panes that you see sometimes for the windows. I'm going to make this what's called a double hung window, which is an old style farmhouse window, and that's what it looks like. So I'm going to just use some hot glue and glue all of this together. I started painting the window, but then realized I needed something to make it be a little bit more sturdy. So I'm taking 2 of the Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks and I'm going to glue them vertically, 2 to the front and 2 to the back. This is also going to serve as the outdoor windowsill. I gave the window a couple of coats of the white chalk paint, and then I decided that I wanted to put a little flower box on here. So I cut this piece of bamboo stick, which is pretty much the same width and thickness as regular popsicle sticks or craft sticks. And I cut 2 small pieces that you can see me gluing here on the side. And now I'm going to take this longer piece and glue that to the front, and that will become my window flower box. I wanted the flower box to have more of a wood look, and I did like the natural wood, but I thought it would look a little bit better if it was just a little bit of a deeper color. I'm just using this walnut gel stain and a tiny rough brush to just dry brush some on the front and the sides. So a mini window and a mini wood flower box also needs mini florals. I'm just taking one of these blooms from the Dollar Tree that you can get in a bunch, and I'm just going to cut off all the little individual stems to give me tiny little lavender flowers. Then I'm going to take a couple of the leaves and cut them down into leaf shapes as well. I'm going to glue 2 of the full-size leaves down at the bottom to cover up the white, but also to give the little tiny flowers and leaves something better to stick to. I'm going to hot glue the lavender bits all in a row all the way across. Then I'm going to add in a few little leaves to the front. I'll add some leaves into the back portion of it and then add a couple more stems to make them look a little bit taller in the center. This kind of tiny work is really finicky. If you had a good pair of tweezers, that would probably work better. I was trying all sorts of different ways to get these in, but my chubby fingers were giving me such a hard time, but I made it work. I'm going to use the same brush and the same black paint and distress the white so it looks a little bit more rustic and weathered. For a final touch, which I think might just have taken it right over the top, I'm taking some buffalo check ribbon and I'm going to glue it down in 3 spots on the one side and just give it a little bit of a fold and then glue it down and then another fold. This is going to look like curtains. And I thought this would be so cute to have the backside of the window with curtains so it looks like you're looking into a real farmhouse window. You'll have to let me know if you think this is too much, if I just blew it with this, or if it's adorable. I think it's super cute, but it might be a little much. So I'd love to hear what you think. Then I think I went a little too far, but I still love it. I glued on this tiny little piece of ribbon to make a valance across the top. So now I have a little set of cafe curtains on my farmhouse window. I think it's adorable. I don't usually do such cutesy stuff here on my channel, but I couldn't resist. I just love how this little guy turned out. My fifth and final project for you today is using one of these little cups that came from the Dollar Tree around Valentine's Day. It has a little heartfelt saying on it, which of course I'm going to remove, and I'm using 100% acetone and a small rag to wipe this right off. I've flipped the little jar upside down and I'm taking another cork piece that was left over from another one of these that I didn't use. I'm going to glue the first cork with the wide side facing down, and then the second cork will be with the narrow side facing down. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a V shape. I'm trying to get the effect of an old-fashioned milk can. I wanted to camouflage some of the little dents and cracks from the cork, so I'm taking some spackle and I'm just going to put a thin layer on just to fill everything in. I ended up resorting to just using my fingers when I got around to the sides because this flat piece just wasn't working and I was too lazy to get up and grab a popsicle stick, if you can believe that. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and clean this all up, and then I'm going to give it a light sanding after it's dry. Then I gave it a couple of coats of my DIY white chalk paint and set it aside to dry. Now, those milk cans have these really funky little handles on the side, and it took me a little bit to figure out what I could use to make it work. And I decided to use some cork ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I cut it in half lengthwise, and then I just glued it onto the sides of the little milk can facing up and then twisting it and facing it down, as you can see me doing here. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think you kind of get the idea when you see them done. Now I'm going to give them a coat of white paint as well. I'm showing you here the little Farm Fresh label that I put on. This was also a tissue paper print. I totally forgot to turn my camera on when I was doing that portion, but it is exactly the same as I did for the terracotta pot earlier on in the video. Now I'm taking a makeup sponge and some black paint and giving this an enamel look. I also used my Craft Smart paint pen to get into some of the center cracks and crevices because I didn't want to mess up with the makeup sponge and put too thick of a line. The shape of this isn't 100% like one of those milk cans, but I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. So since I've done a bunch of tiered tray minis over the past year, I thought I would show you how I style my tiered trays as well. I'm just going to put it to music and I'm going to make it go a little quick, but you'll get the idea of how I like to do them. But first I'm going to show you how this little swing works out. So your tiered tray has to have a little pedestal piece at the top where you can loop the little strings on, and then you can add whatever you want to your little swing. And I just love this little birdie. I think he looks adorable on here, but you could definitely put other items on here as well. So now I'm just going to start adding some different elements and lots of greenery. I love to have greenery all through in pots and just tucked in between in all of the little open spaces. So I hope you enjoyed this part of my video. My first project is using this wind chime that I picked up at my local Dollarama store for $3.50. It had two sweet little owls on them, so I decided to make them over. They've got a bunch of holes in them from where they were all tied together, so I'm going to fill them in with spackle. This type of spackle starts out pink and turns white when it's completely dry. I'm taking a baby wipe just to clean off all the excess that I got around the holes, and once it's dry, I'll be ready to paint. This first one I'm going to paint with my DIY chalk paint in white, and it's going to need a couple of coats to make sure that it's nicely covered. I don't really want any of that green and those other colors to show through. I thought since summer is coming that I would paint this second owl with Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the color Serenity Blue. It is so pretty. It's just a really nice blue, a little similar to the Annie Sloan Duck Egg Blue, but this one is a little bit lighter, and I really love the coverage. I'm going to put some white wax on the blue owl. And the way I get the white wax is to use clear wax and then just add some white paint into it. I mix it up in a little jar and then I've got it for whenever I need a white wax accent. This is turning out really nice. I'm basically just dry brushing it and it's collecting in all of the nooks and crannies, but then I'm able to just brush it off wherever I don't need it. The white owl is going to get some dark brown. I'm using a gel stain in walnut. I'm going to do the same thing, brush it on, but this time I'm going to take a baby wipe and wipe it off a little bit, and you're going to see how all of the darkness stays in those nooks and crannies, and you get a lighter effect on the other parts of it. It turns out absolutely gorgeous. I really love this effect. I think these owls turned out super cute and they're going to look great on my tiered tray. My second project is using this old sugar bowl. I picked it up at a thrift store thinking that I could resell it when I was thinking I could resell things, but unfortunately, there's no market where I live for this kind of stuff. That's why it's at the thrift store. Anyhow, I decided to go ahead and paint it with my Serenity Blue chalk paint since I had it out and make it a cute little candy dish. I created a label on my computer and I printed it off on tissue paper, which is something that I really love to do. I'm applying it with Mod Podge and the tissue paper almost disappears. When you put it on something white, you can't even tell at all. On this blue, you see a little bit of shading, but that's okay. I don't mind that look. I had a little piece of the design left over, so I cut it out and I'm going to apply it to the knob of the lid. If you're interested in learning how I print on tissue paper, I have a full tutorial listed down in my description box. I'll also have the printable available on my website, which is also linked down below. Now I've got a couple of honey projects for you. First, I'm going to start off using this little plastic seed starter pot that I got at the Dollar Tree. I think they came like in a pack of 8 or 10, so I've got a bunch of them. And I'm going to start gluing some nautical rope, which is also from the Dollar Tree, all the way around until I get to the top. This is going to turn into a cute little bee skep. I'm using hot glue and I'm just gluing it about every couple of inches just to make sure that it stays secure. Now that I've gotten to the top of the pot, I'm going to need to adjust myself a little bit and glue the nautical rope onto itself, making sure that I make it smaller every time I loop it around. I want this to have a nice rounded top. I want to take a quick sec and point out this new hot glue gun that I have. It's dual temperature, so there's a high setting and a low setting. It stands on its own and It can even be used for a few minutes cordless. If you're interested in checking this out, I've got a link down in my description box. Now that I'm at the top of the skep, I'm just going to cut the rope off and make a loop and glue that into place as well. I'm going to take a smaller piece of the jute rope and glue it into a circle, which will become the door of the skep. The next step then is to paint the inside of the circle with black paint, and then it will look like a little door for the bees to get in. To create a little bit more embellishment and make it look a little more cutesy, I'm taking some of this black and white striped ribbon that I got at Michael's on clearance. I'm just going to tie a really small shoestring bow and then glue that to the top of the skep. Of course, if I have a bee skep, I've got to have a bee. I glued two beads together, one smaller one and one larger one, and then I painted them both black. Using the same ribbon, I'm going to cut out 4 little wings and glue them to the back of my bee. I also gave the bee a little antenna, and I'm just going to glue him right on top of his little house. I think he turned out adorable. For my next honey related project, I took a little jam jar and I painted it with a beigey gray kind of color. You can see the paintbrush down at the bottom of the screen here. For some reason, I did not press the record button when I was painting the jar, and I just gave it 2 coats. I'm taking this little gift bag that is fabric, and I got that at Michael's on clearance right at the end of the Christmas season. I'm just going to cut out a circle and I'm going to put that on top of the red lid of the jam jar and make it look like a little old-fashioned kind of jelly jar. I'm hot gluing the fabric right onto the lid, and then I'm just going to cut out more of a circle shape so I don't have any flaps hanging down. I've put the lid on the jar, and now I'm just taking some little butcher twine and I'm just wrapping it around a few times, and then I'll just tie it off in a knot. Using my Craft Smart paint pen in the color black, and this is the thick chisel tip, I'm going to write the word honey, just some simple letters with a few little ticks on the ends just to make it look a little bit more homemade. I drew on a little bee with a little trail of dots, and now I'm just taking a fine tip Sharpie marker and drawing some dashes as shadows along the letters just to give them more dimension. I added a honeycomb bead on a bamboo skewer and glued it to the side of the jar, and I think it turned out really cute. This next project is going to be a sign. I'm starting off with a 4x6 frame backing, and I'm just using the tumbling tower blocks to make sure that I have the right size. So I'm just kind of placing out the frame, and then I'm going to mark off what size I need to cut the frame material itself. This frame backing is about the thickness of a Dollar Tree sign, so it's very easy to just score it and snap it. I'm just going to use hot glue to glue the blocks together, just making sure that I wipe off any excess that squeezes out in between. I want this sign to be double-sided, so what I'm going to do is just press the frame backing into the center of the blocks and then glue it into place. I'm going to use the same gel stain that I did for the owl. I'm going to brush it on this time and then wipe off the excess with a rag. The first side of this sign is going to be painted white on the inside, so I'm using my DIY chalk paint and I'm going to give it a couple of coats. For the other side of the sign, I'm going to use this black and white buffalo check wrapping paper. I'm just going to trace it out and cut it to size. This paper is fairly thin and I didn't want it to get too wrinkled, so I'm going to use a glue stick instead of Mod Podge. On the white side, I'm going to do my tissue paper printing method. I've already applied a coat of Mod Podge, and now I'm going to put this cute little printable frame on. I thought it looked like maybe some lemon leaves, so I decided to go with a little bit of a lemon theme on the front and the back of this. So I'm just going to take my brush with Mod Podge and smooth out all the wrinkles and add enough glue on the top that it stays secure. This time, instead of putting the whole image together, I printed off multiple pieces and I'm just going to layer them right on top. So this is just a little sign that says Fielder Sweet Honey Lemon Drops. I'm also going to add a little honey jar and two little yellow candies. Since I had to use quite a bit of hot glue, I'm going to camouflage that by adding some white cotton rope all the way around the inside of the frame. Keeping with the lemon theme for this sign, I want to put a slice of lemon on the back. So I took a styrofoam ball and I cut out a faux lemon slice. And now I'm just taking some masking tape and I'm going to tape the whole thing all the way around just to camouflage some of the texture of the styrofoam. I'm using some regular yellow acrylic paint and I'm adding some baking soda to it so I can give this lemon slice some texture and make it look more realistic. Now that the paint is dry, I'm going to use a white chalk marker and make a circle around the inside. Then I'll do some pie-shaped wedges and just add a little bit more of the white chalk paint to make it look more realistic. If you're new to my channel and you like what you're seeing, I would love for you to stick around by hitting that subscribe button. It will really support my channel and help it grow. I'm going to hot glue the lemon right into the middle of the frame. Then I'm going to add a couple of little green leaves, and I've also added some of the same white cotton rope. And now I've got a cute little double-sided sign for my tiered tray. This last project is using a soap holder sponge that's stainless steel. I'm just going to take off those little rubber suction cups and I'll take it outside and give it one good coat of flat black spray paint. Using the same cotton rope that I used for the frames, I'm going to start by hot gluing the end piece on the back and I'm just going to wrap it around the bottom part of this little basket. I'm going to hot glue it every couple of inches and then just keep wrapping it all the way around until I get to the bottom. I've glued a couple of pieces of floral foam to the bottom and now I'm just cutting off some of these Dollar Tree stems so I can fit them in and make this a miniature little lavender arrangement. I think this little arrangement turned out super cute. I'm going to start out by making the tiered tray. I've got two terracotta saucers in different sizes. I've got a thrifted little glass that it's hard for you to see, but you'll see it shortly. And I'm going to take some white DIY chalk paint and water it down a little bit. I want to give these a whitewashed look. I'm going to give the bottom of this saucer one coat, not too thick, just with my brush once right all the way around. I'm going to be leaving some of the bottom open because that's where I will be adding the little glass for the tiered tray portion, and I like those to be on natural products and not on top of paint. Sometimes I just don't have luck gluing on top of paint. The paint dries really quickly, so I'm going to just mist down this little rag and I'm going to rub off some of the paint, mostly in the edges, that kind of thing, but I do want a little bit of that terracotta to show through in a few spots. So I'm just going to continue doing that until I achieve the look I like. Here you can see I didn't add enough paint, so I'm just adding a little bit more to make it look sort of even all the way around. Both of the pieces have dried, and you can see that the large saucer also has a raw spot. That will be for where I need to glue the glass onto that part. I'm taking my stencil brush from the Dollar Tree and some clay chalk paint from Martha Stewart Vintage Chalk Paints, and I'm just dragging a little bit of color all the way around the saucer. Using the same rag, I'm just going to go over this paint. I want it to blend in. Terracotta pots don't have a distressed brush stroke kind of look. They are more blended, and this way it just will make it look more natural. For the additional pieces, I'm using 3 of the napkin rings from the Dollar Tree and this thrifted glass, and I'm going to be spray painting them with flat white paint. To attach everything together, I'm using my Starbond medium consistency glue. I love these glues. It comes with an accelerator, which makes everything dry lickety-split. This glue is a medium consistency, so it's a little bit thicker than their original thin set glue. And this gives you a little bit more working time, which is really great. Now, what I should have done is put a pencil line around where my glass is going to sit, but I'm just kind of eyeballing it, putting a good amount of glue on. Then you take the accelerator and you spray the other part of your project and then put the two together. I like to give it an extra spray with the accelerator if any of the glue is on the outside, and that hardens it within about 5 seconds. And you can see here that I'm able to lift this up, nothing moves. I'm just checking it to make sure that it's nice and sturdy. My first farmhouse mini project is a little book stack. I've got 2 of these wooden blocks. They were a thrift store find. I'm just going to glue them together. I would have rather had 3, but 3 was too tall and it just looked weird. So I'm just using the 2. I'm going to give them 1 coat of my DIY chalk paint in white. I'm going to be covering part of this little book stack with this beautiful yellow and white gingham napkin with these beautiful bees on it. Now, this was sent to me from a subscriber, Denise in Arizona. Thank you so much for your little bag of goodies. I'm finally getting to use them. I'm going to apply the napkin with some Mod Podge, and I'm starting with the end of the book, and I've got my ceiling fan going, so that little napkin's having a grand old time flying around on my table. And then what I'm going to do is add another little bee that I'm just going to cut out from a little extra piece and add that right into the center. I love black and white with yellow, so I've got a little piece of this gingham black and white ribbon, and I did already cut it down and put it all the way around the book. I also added a little piece of twine. Now I'm just going to be gluing on a tiny little bow and add a little bit of greenery and some florals. Last thing I do to my little stacks is take my craft knife and just gently cut the tissue paper or the napkin, whatever you're using, all the way through in the center so you know it's a book stack. Just make sure that your Mod Podge is really dry before you do this. When I'm at the thrift store, I'm always on the lookout for these little bitty items that can be used for a tiered tray. This was a green marble little jug, and I had previously painted it. Didn't like how it turned out, so it sat around for a little bit. But now it's time for a makeover. I'm just going to give it a couple of coats of white chalk paint first. I went to my Cricut and I just cut out the word cream. I'm going to add that to the little jug. Now, when I usually do this, most of the time the paint peels off with the transfer tape, but I got smart. What I did was put the transfer tape down on my paper a couple of times. This is actually vellum paper, so it's a little more of the plasticky side. And I took away some of the sticky on my transfer tape, and that did the trick. I didn't lose any paint off of my jug. This next project is super cute. I've got this little ceramic bird that came off of a wind chime. I get them at my Dollarama store. So there's just two little birdies and then a whole bunch of pipes and things. I'm going to give it a couple of coats of white chalk paint. Next, I'm going to take a large bead and this wooden dowel that I believe is 3/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to push the bead down onto the dowel. I want to make sure that I have enough space for the dowel to go up inside of the bird, but I need the bead there to hold the dowel in place and so the bird isn't wonky. So what I'm going to do is just keep measuring, and then I'm going to cut the dowel down for how long I need it. I'm using one of these little wooden blocks that I picked up at the thrift store in a bag, and I'm going to now drill a hole into the center of it. I'll need to use my 3/8 of an inch spade drill bit, which will give me a really nice hole to fit the dowel. I've hot glued the dowel into the small block, although it's a really snug fit, so I really didn't need the hot glue. And now I'm just giving it one coat of black chalk paint. I'm going to go up the dowel and do the bead as well. Using some hot glue again, I'm going to put some on the very top of the dowel and then on the top of the bead, and I'll place the dowel inside the cavity of the bird. Again, the bead will just hold it from going too far, but it's going to put it really beautifully together, and now I've got a sweet little bird on a little pedestal. Using an old brush that has a bunch of dried paint on it, I'm going to be able to do some dry brushing on the bottom, the dowel, and the bead. I needed to do something to distress the bird, so I decided to take my clear wax from Folk Art Home Decor, and I'm going to add just a little bit of the Martha Stewart Vintage Chalk Paint in clay. I'm going to apply a generous amount to the bird, and because this is more liquidy than chalk paint, it's going to sit in all of the cracks and crevices, so those areas will become a little bit darker and the other areas will stay a little bit whiter. I love how this looks. I didn't take any wipe and wipe anything away. I just left it exactly how it was after I painted it. And I think this little bird is absolutely adorable. I found these little black and white espresso cups at my Dollarama store last year, and I grabbed a couple of them. And I tend to just make them over for every season. So for this season, I'm just adding my words sweet tea that I used with my Cricut, and I'm just going to add a little bit more embellishment with a tiny little cardstock lemon slice. I have these little papers that came from my dollar store. I'm going to use this tiny little Dollar Tree scissors to cut it out and a glue stick to apply it to my little cup. I think this one turned out super cute. I've got a bunch of these red wooden beads that I picked up at a thrift store last year, and I'm going to use some gray primer spray paint to paint them gray first so the red color doesn't bleed through. I've put the beads on a bamboo skewer to make it easier to paint. I'm doing one of them black and one of them white. While the beads dry, I decided to make some tags. These are just little pieces of paint stir sticks left over. I'm just going to make the rounded edges the same on both sides, and then I'm going to paint one of them black and one of them white. I'm going to add a couple of words to each of the tags. The black one is going to say summer and the white one is going to say sweet. I'm using a white chalk marker from the dollar store for the white part, and the black one is one of my Craft Smart oil-based paint pens. As you can see here, I wrote Sweet Summer and I added some dots on the tags as well. Now I'm taking some of this white cotton rope that I grabbed at Dollarama and I'm taking it apart. It has 3 strands. I'm making a tassel. So I'm going to just wrap the yarn around my hand a few times, and I've got a couple different pieces, so I'm just going to incorporate those all together. I'm going to tie off the top of the loop, then I'll add another piece of string and make the neck of the tassel, and then I'll just cut them all the way through and fringe them out. Using some hot glue, I'm going to glue the tags together on an angle because I want them to be one piece. I'm using a piece of thin twine that has a tape on the edge to feed through the beads. When I get to the bottom, I'm also going to incorporate the black and white string that also has tape on it all the way through the bead. And that's going to just make sure that this tassel is very secure and won't ever fall off. I painted 4 of the beads with that Martha Stewart clay chalk paint, and every 5 black and white beads, I'm going to add one of these clay colored beads just to give it a little bit more interest. Now I'm finished putting on all my beads and I'm just putting a little dab of hot glue inside the last bead so the twine will stay securely in place. Then I'm also going to knot the twine 2 or 3 times to make sure it doesn't have the ability to slip through the beads. Now I'm going to take the end of the twine and hot glue it right onto the back of the tags. I'm doing it about an inch worth because I don't want anything to fall apart. I know this isn't the real way to do it. I should have probably drilled a couple of holes in those little wooden tags and tied it off, but I got a little lazy. But anyhow, not everybody has a drill. Hot glue works just as well. The last project today is using this Dollar Tree Buffalo check bandana. I'm just cutting out a square and I'm going all the way around with the black portion so all of the edges are the same. I'm going to use this little paper espresso cup, but I'm going to cut it down about halfway because it's too tall. This is going to hold my florals inside the bandana. To give this little arrangement some weight, I'm using just an old river rock and hot gluing it down to the bottom of the little cup. Then I'm going to take a little piece of foam, which is just a pool noodle, and I'm going to glue that inside as well. I'm going to use some of these little picks from the Dollar Tree. They're the lavender ones. And the greenery is part of a bush that I picked up for half price at Michael's. I'm just going to stick all of them into the floral foam. Laying the bandana with the right side on the bottom, I'm going to put the little arrangement right on top of it and then bunch it together above the little cup. Take a little piece of twine and then tie it off really nice and tight so it stays together really well. I'm just going to add a little shoestring bow and this project is done. I think it's the cutest one yet. I really hope you enjoyed my tiered tray DIY and these 6 adorable farmhouse cuties. If you did, I'd love for you to give me a thumbs up. That tells YouTube that you like my channel and they promote me more. If you're new to my channel, I would love for you to stick around and hit that subscribe button. That black arrow will show you exactly where to click. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of your support. Take care and have a wonderful day.